Chapter 25, Dread at the Last Minute. As Pelton's truck drew near the village of Sparks, Lena was more and more impatient. She longed to see Poppy and Miss Myrtle and Dune. "Another day's travel," Pelton said. "We'll be in Sparks by tomorrow morning." Lena was so excited to sleep much. Lena was too excited to sleep much that night. Her mind galloped forward to the people she would see tomorrow and backward to everything she'd seen on the journey. She finally fell asleep a few hours before morning, and when she awoke, she could feel immediately that something in the air had changed. A wind had arisen, a warm, gusty wind that bent the brown grasses and rattled in the leaves of the trees. The blue of the sky had faded to a hazy gray, and the heat seemed more fiery than ever. She felt something unsettling in the air, a warning like the first traces of fever when an illness is coming. "Could be nearly 100 degrees today," said Pelton, "but in a week or two, the heat will start to slack off. The season's changing. You can feel it in the wind." They started out early. After only an hour or so, Lena could see the fields and buildings of Sparks in the distance. She stood up. She was sitting on the front seat of the truck between Maddie and Pelton and shielded her eyes with her hand to see better. There it was, and now it looked like home to her. The solid little brown houses, the tidy fields around them. When they came to the road and led to the Pioneer Hotel, Lena had a sudden idea. "Let me off here," she said. "I want to tell Dune I'm back. I'll walk the rest of the way." She thanked Pelton for all his help, and he thanked her in return. "Take a few of the things you found," he said. "Whatever you like." She rummaged through the crate until she found the magnifying glass, a magnet, and the little red truck, and she tucked these into her back into her pack. "I'll go into town and help Pelton with the trading," Maddie said to Lena. "I'll meet you later at the doctor's house." Lena jumped down from the truck, her legs strong and springy, her hair flying in the wind. She ran up to the road toward the hotel. She expected to see people at the river washing and people sitting on the hotel steps eating their breakfast, getting ready for work, but the ground of the hotel were empty, and when she went inside, she found people milling about the lobby in confusion. Some of them were crying. She saw the two Hoover sisters, one wailing, the other trying to comfort her. And she saw old Nammy Prague sitting on the rolled-up blanket, grumbling to herself. People were arguing with each other. She heard angry voices and questioning voices and voices full of fear. For a second, she stood looking, wondering what was happening. Then someone spotted her. "Lena!" Her name rang out over the hubbub. Faces turned toward her, and people rushed up to her and crowded around her. "You're back! Where have you been? We thought you'd disappear forever." She saw Clary's face smiling, and she heard the voices of friends from school, and Captain Fleary of the Ember Messengers, and someone who used to work in the shoe store. "Are you all right?" They said. "What a time to come back! Why did you leave? Where have you been?" Hands reached for her, arms wrapped her in hugs. She saw a red head bouncing up and down. Lizzie jumped in the air, trying to see over the crowd, and she saw Mrs. Polster beaming at her and Miss Thorne at her side. I'm fine, she said. "I'm so happy to be back, but what's going on here? And where's Dune?" "I'm here." It was Dune's voice. There he was, just coming down the stairs. She broke away from the welcoming crowd and ran over to him. He didn't speak, just reached out an arm and grabbed her hand. The look in his face startled her. Was he angry? "Come outside," he said. She followed him down a passage and out the door in the back of the hotel. There was a small concrete terrace there, bordered by the low wall. Behind the wall, the drooping branches of a dusty tree stirred in the wind. Dune sat down on the wall and pulled her down next to him. For a moment, he said nothing. When he spoke, his voice came out in a rough shout. "Where have you been?" he said. "Don't you know how everyone has worried about you? Don't you know everyone has thought you were dead?" Lena shrank back. "I didn't mean to be gone so long," she said. "It was a mistake, I thought." Nearly a month you've been gone," Dune said. "It was because of the city, Dune. I thought the city would be like those drawings I made. I thought maybe we could go there, all of us, and live there and be happy," she finished weakly. "You could have told me you were going," Dune said. "I might have wanted to go too. Did you think of that?" "I didn't really think of it at all," Lena said. "I just saw the chance and went. But if I had thought about it..." She frowned, remembering, I'd probably have figured you wouldn't want to come because you were too busy with that tick. Dune's face fell. Oh, he said. Well, you're right. I guess I was. I thought tick might be. Dune stopped looking flustered. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry too, said Lena. They were silent for a moment. Then Lena said, shall we forgive each other? All right, said Dune. He smiled. Lena smiled back, but what's going on here, she asked. Why is everyone so upset? They've ordered us out, Lena. They've told us we have to leave tomorrow morning. What? Lena could not take this in. Who has to leave? All of us, all the people of Amber. And go where? Out into the empty lands. We have to make a new life for ourselves, they said. On our own. Lena's mouth dropped open. A wild confusion filled her mind. But how can we? What would we eat? Where would we live? Again, the frightening picture rose in her mind. The people of Amber scattered like fallen birds across the vast dry landscape. There are wolves out there, she said, and bandits. I know, said Dune, and it will be winter soon. Have you heard of winter? Lena shook her head. When Dune explained, her eyes widened in shock. All this time you've been gone, Lena. They've done terrible things to us. The first thing was that boy Torin. He told her about the smashed tomatoes that Torin blamed on him. He said he saw you, Lena said, outraged. Why would he do that? Dune shrugged. Ask him. I don't know. He went on to tell her what else had happened. They've thrown us out of their houses. They've written hateful words on our walls. They've poisoned us with leaves. But why? Why did we do that? What did we do to them? Lena said. While the wind blew her hair forward over her shoulders, she clutched a handful of tangled strands to hold them still. We ate their food, said Dune. That was the main thing. But other things had happened too. He told her about the riot in the plaza and about what happened at the fountain. Now, he said, they've threatened us. They've threatened to use a weapon on us if we don't leave. So Tick says we'll use our weapons on them. Our weapons? What weapons? Dune sighed. For the first time, Lena noticed how thin he was. She saw the shadow beneath his eyes. There's so much to tell you, Dune said, and we only have today. But I haven't even been home, Lena said. I have to see Poppy and Miss Myrtle, and they're still at the doctor's. Is Poppy all right? A scattering of dry leaves blew against her legs. The wind whipped her hair. The whole world had changed suddenly, just in the last half hour. Her throat tightened, and she felt tears threatening. Yes, they're still at the doctor's, Dune said. Come on, I'll go with you. We'll talk there. Wait, said Lena, I brought you a present, 2 presents. She unrolled the pack she'd carried all the way from the city, took out the magnet and the magnifying glass and handed them to Dune. This one is a magnet, she said. If you put it against metal, it sticks there. I guess it isn't very useful, but it's interesting. The other one is for making things bigger. Making them look bigger. Thank you, Dune said. He examined his present curiously. He held the glass up and peered through it at the back of the hotel. Look at something small, Lena said, like a leaf or a bug. Dune riffled among the leaves on the ground and found an ant, which he set on the palm of his hand, holding the glass above an ant. He looked through it. Oh, he said, look, you can see his knee joints. And even, he trailed off, absorbed in looking. Then he raised his eyes to Lena. It's like a miracle, he said. He blew the ant from his palm and looked around until he found a beetle. Look at this, he cried. You can see it chewing. He tried a feather and a bit of moth wing and a blade of grass. This is such an amazing world, he said, finally putting the glass and the magnet into his pocket. I love it here, except for the troubles with people. Lena and Dune went through the village and up the road to the doctor's house. It was still early morning when they got there. When they came through the door, they saw everyone at the table eating breakfast. Miss Myrtle was facing the door, so she saw them first. She stood up, her spoon still in her mouth. She stared for a second, her eyes round, her mouth open, words trying to come out of it. Then she rushed toward Lena and wrapped her in a hug. At the same time, Poppy jumped down from the bench, dashed towards Lena, and hugged her knees. The doctor stood up and watched this reunion wide-eyed. Torin leaped up, too, but not to hug Lena. He ran to the door and looked out, and then he cried, "Where's Casper? Isn't he here too? Where is he?" But no one paid attention to him. They were too busy fuzzing over Lena, asking questions and not giving her a chance to answer. "Where have you been? Are you all right? Why didn't you tell us? Do you know what's happening here?" Poppy yelled. Weena, pick me up." pick me up. And the doctor, thrown into a state of even more confusion than usual, murmured, some tea? Or let's see. Why don't we all? So glad you're, and all around the edges torn, pulling at Lena's sleeve, saying, but why isn't he here? Where is he? When is he coming? And getting no answer. When things calmed down a little, Lena said Maddie will be coming soon. She stayed in town to help the roamer for a while. Miss Myrtle stopped smiling and grew stern. Lena, she said, how could you go off like that and not talk to me first? And just leave the careless little note, which was not, I would point out, true. 3 days, you said. It'd been 28. That was a thoughtless, foolish thing to do. I know, Lena said. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't know I'd be gone for so long, she explained now. When she overheard Casper, she thought he'd say a day's journey, when really he said 5 days' journey. And then she said, other things happened, and it took a long time. Yes, said Miss Myrtle, and we had a long, long time to worry about you. She picked up Lena's pack, which Lena had dropped on the floor, and set it on the window seat. And you know what's happened here? You know we've been ordered to leave tomorrow. I know, Lena said, but I can't believe it's true. It's true, said Miss Myrtle. It doesn't please me a bit, but what to do about it, and I don't know. Come and have some breakfast. Lena and Dune sat down at the table where the others had been eating raspberries and cream. Though Lena was so thoroughly sick of travelers' cakes that all real food should have looked good to her, and she had no appetite. Her stomach was in a knot. I can't eat, she said. I'm not hungry. I have to, Dune, and I have to talk. At least take an apple, said Miss Myrtle. First of the season, the doctor added, from up north. Lena took a hard red fruit, and she and Dune went outside. The heat was breaking now. They went through the courtyard where the doctor's plant pots were mostly empty, the plants having either been put into the ground or died. The ones still there struggled in the heat, limp or brown. They crossed the road and walked down to the riverbank. Even the river was suffering in the heat. It no longer flowed deep and smooth, but ran in streams like the exposed stones. Its edges were yellow, green, and smelly. They sat on the ground. Lena said, it would take me hours to tell you everything I've seen. But listen, this is the main thing. People had a beautiful city and they wrecked it. On purpose, said Dune. With wars, with fighting. It was terrible, Dune. She shuddered, remembering. That war, it sort of whispered to me. There was a moment when I could hear screams. I could see flames. And there's nothing left. Almost nothing. And all across the empty lands are there houses? Some, but they're old and falling down. Mostly it's fields and fields of brown grass. There's howling animals. If we go out there and try to live, we couldn't. That's why a lot of people want to fight, Dune told her about Tick and the weapons he and his warriors had gathered. He explained the plan, how they would go into the village tomorrow, refusing to leave, prepare to fight, and he told her about the terrible weapon the town leaders had threatened to use. Yes, Lena said, I've heard about that weapon too. Torrin mentioned it one time. But what is it? We don't know, Dune said. If it's from the old times, Lena said, then it is so terrible that Tick's little weapon would be like twigs against it. The old weapon could burn whole cities. She clasped her arms across her stomach and bent forward. Everything inside her felt cramped, knotted up. Her hands were slick with sweat. There can't be a war, she said.
But we can't leave either, said Dune. They sat watching the water struggle along between the rocks. The sun blazed down, burning the back of their necks. Don't you think, said Dune, that fighting would be better than just giving in? At least is doing something. I don't know, said Lena. It scares me. She ran her fingers over the glossy red skin of the apple Miss Myrtle had given her. I talked a lot to Maddie on the journey, she said at last. She's wise, Dune. She told me how a war gets started. It's when people say, you hurt me, so I'll hurt you back. But that's just how people are, said Dune. Of course, when they hurt you, you want to get back at them. And then they want to get back at you. And then you want to get back at them again, only worse. It goes on and on unless someone stops it. Stop it how? You have to catch it soon, Maddie said. As soon as you see it starting, you have to stop it. Otherwise, it can be too late. But how do you stop it? You have to reverse the direction, said Lena. That's what Maddie told me. She said that if someone had been brave enough, the wars might not have started in the first place. But Lena, Dune slapped his hands down on the ground next to him. What does that mean? How do you do it? Lena wasn't entirely clear about this. She took a bite off the red fruit the doctor had handed her. It looked as hard as a polished stone, but the juice that burst into her mouth was sweet. I think it's this, she said. She chewed and swallowed. Instead of getting back at the other side with something just as bad as they did to you, or something worse, you do something good, or at least you keep yourself from doing something bad. She took another bite of the apple. I think that's it. One bad thing after another leads to worse things. So you do a good thing, and that turns it around. Dune sighed. That's not very helpful, he said. How are we supposed to do something good for these people who have done so many bad things to us? Why would we even want to? Well, that's it, Selena, wiping apple juice off her chin. You don't want to, but you do it anyway. That's what makes it hard. Maddie said it was very hard. It's much harder to be good than bad, she said. So what do we do then? Said Dune. His tone was bitter. Say we'll be happy to work without food? Say we'll always be nice no matter what you do to us? No, Selena, that can't be right. Or should we just go quietly out into the empty lands and not bother them anymore? No, Selena, that can't be right either. She stared at the water rippling by. She was thinking hard. We don't want to leave, she said, and we don't want to fight. Do you think those are the only two choices? What else could there be? If we don't fight, they'll make us leave. If we don't leave, we'll have to fight. Lena discovered a tough part in the center of the apple surrounding some brown seeds. She picked at the seeds with her fingernails. There must be some other way, she said. What if we all just sit down in front of the hotel and refuse to move? We don't leave, but we don't fight. They wouldn't use their weapon on us if we weren't fighting, would they? I don't know, said Dune. They might. I don't think they would, Lena said. They're not bad people. But we couldn't sit there forever, Dune said. Sooner or later, they make us leave. They'd pick us all up one by one and load us onto trucks and drive us away. Maybe they wouldn't, Selena. Maybe we could talk and work something out. I don't think so, said Dune. Tick and his warriors would never just sit. They want to fight. Lena drew up her knees and rested her chin on them. Something good, she thought. What a good act would turn things around. We could volunteer to be roamers, she said. A whole lot of us, so they wouldn't have to feed us, and we could bring things back to them. We don't know how to be roamers, said Dune. We don't have trucks or oxen. We wouldn't know where to go. We would say, well, we'll do all the worst jobs, Lena said. But that wouldn't be fair, said Dune impatiently. Why would we? That's no good. He stood up, slapping the dry grass from his pants. I think it's too late for any of that. None of it's going to work. Lena stayed where she was, still thinking. She desperately wanted to find an answer, but no answer came to her. Her spirits sank, and she suddenly felt tired. Well then, we just have to be on the lookout, she said. Some chance might turn up. We have to watch for it. I don't know what else to do. She knew how weak and silly this sounded. But to her surprise, Dune smiled a little. That's like what my father told me when I was working in the pipeworks. Pay attention, he said. It was a good idea then. I suppose it still is. Anyway, I guess it's the best we can do. Lena dropped her apple core on the ground and scuffed some dirt over it. And they trudged back to the doctor's house. Dune stayed there for lunch instead of going to the Pardons, and then he headed back to the hotel. Lena meant to spend the rest of the day thinking as hard as she could about the choice she'd have to make tomorrow. She sat on the window seat sideways, her legs stretched out, and she tried to get her mind to produce ideas. But she kept coming up against the two walls. Fight, she didn't want to fight, or leave, she didn't want to leave. A slow fly buzzed against the window. Wind stirred in the grape leaves outside. Think, thought Lena. Pay attention. Then she fell asleep.